Good morning, everyone. We're going to start with gun bans in Saskatchewan and then move into the UN Security Council seat, which is, obviously the most important news today, aside from the government potentially falling today, but it won't fall today because the NDP and the Liberals have an agreement. So nothing's going to happen, but lots is going on. Okay. Saskatchewan gun ban. CBC is reporting, and this is June 16th. Today is June 17th. Saskatchewan amends legislation prevents municipalities from banning guns. Amended legislation in response to plans by federal government to give authority to ban guns to municipalities. And this is a bad plan because what if Mississauga bans a specific handgun and Toronto doesn't ban the same handgun, right? Oh man, it's legal in Mississauga. Sorry about that, right? And I don't think that it even applies to enough people that are legitimately carrying handguns around that a handgun ban would even be effective. And usually the police come across the illegal guns as they're being discarded as the people are running away or as they're found after the crime, etc. Right? Like the guns are illegal anyway. So, these gun bans, I don't think they work. Anyway, here's Saskatchewan. And Saskatchewan doesn't... It is a provincial jurisdiction that the federal government is overstepping their jurisdiction on. Okay. The Saskatchewan government announced amendments to provincial legislation on Tuesday, which says it will ensure provincial jurisdiction over gun laws, a move to counter federal plans to delegate that authority to municipalities. So taking the power away from provinces and handing it to cities, which does not make any sense at all. Why not have a bunch of different laws? Because I'm sure there are some municipalities that will ban handguns. Back to this. Amendments to the Miscellaneous Municipal Statutes Amendment Act 2019 are being made to ensure the rights of legal gun owners in Saskatchewan, the province said, and place limitations on the ability to ban firearm and handgun ownership within the province through the new local municipal bylaw. This isn't federal jurisdiction. The feds, have chosen to make a decision to move forward on essentially a firearm ban that is expanding day by day by stealth on their website, Premier Scott Moe said on Tuesday. Moe said the amended legislation will also prevent what he calls patchwork rules across the province, differing from community to community. And it's a problem. It's a valid concern, and one that the government doesn't care about. They don't care. I don't think they care about anything other than optics, right? Like they don't actually care about the things they say they care about. They care about how people think they believe about the things they say they care about. But as far as action goes, they don't actually follow through. And you can see this in not respecting their own pipeline rules. Like they made all these rules for pipelines, like meaningfully engaging with the communities, right? And I mean, how do you define that, meaningfully engaging with the communities? It's kind of up to interpretation, right? So like if you get that in front of a judge who says you did only these 3 things, how is that meaningfully engaging with the community? So I mean, they may have snookered themselves by using weak language, but I mean, that's their fault then, right? Like, I don't know. So them taking over the jurisdiction or them offering the power that is currently provincial and downloading it to municipalities, it doesn't seem like a fix, right? It just seems like confusing the issue. Trudeau's moving on to the UN Security Council seat, the temporary UN Security Council seat. Now, I just want to point out, if there's been a racist under every rock in Canada's institutions, we've had Security Council seats prior to 2000. We've had the ability to clean up the racism, and Liberals have been in charge for the last 5 years. Have they done nothing on racism? Have the Liberals who were in charge for most of the last 25 or 30 years with the decade of Harper removed, I think Liberals hold more years than the Conservatives in the last 35 years. I saw that somewhere, but I haven't done the counting. So the Liberals failed on racism up to now, and now they want to fix it? Now? Yeah, and we're all racist, and it's our fault. Come on. Anyway, Trudeau wants to get on the UN Security Council seat. I don't want him to get on the seat on the UN Security Council. I think he's been an awful leader for Canada. I think he's been divisive and just nothing but trouble. And I hope that we don't win. I don't think that we deserve to have the influence. I think that Canada has been poor in their response. I think that the government has been tone deaf in its response. Just like the example I used earlier, they don't even follow their own rules. Like it would be laughable if it wasn't happening to us, right? But it's happening to us, and we're a laughing stock. So I mean, like that's something, I suppose. Anyway, Canada's 4-year campaign for United Nations Security Council seat will reach its peak Wednesday. That's today, as voting begins at UN headquarters in New York. Starting at 9 a.m. Wednesday, countries will begin to cast their ballots, with Canada vying against Ireland and Norway for 2 seats on the 15-member council. On his daily press conference Tuesday, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said he was hopeful Canada would be successful after the lengthy campaign, but he said the seat isn't a prize, it's a tool Canada can use to improve the world. Like money. Like money we're borrowing from our future generations to send around the world to improve it. Justin Trudeau will stop at nothing as long as he's spending your money. Ridiculous. Back to this quote, getting a seat on the UN Security Council itself is not an end to itself. It's a means to an end. It's a way for Canada to continue to be influential and have an impact. Canada also authored the UN Compact on Migration, which I think is an awful, terrible legacy. It's a broken, ridiculous piece of legislation that gives rights to non-citizens, more rights to non-citizens than it gives to citizens. It is a junk piece of legislation that should be thrown out and absolutely criticized. It's awful. It's terrible. And Canada wears it proudly, right? And like the destruction of our borders is being celebrated, right? And I don't think it's good legislation for Canada. I don't think it's good legislation to be copied around the world, but Ahmed Hassan, one of the architects of it, does. And he pushes it around the world. He says Canada can lead the way in helping people who don't have a country. But the thing is, there are something like 200 million people without a country in the world, and Canada has a population of 37 million. Can we realistically claim that we are able to help everybody? No. I think that is absolutely folly. And when you author compacts like the Compact on Migration, when you say things like that and put that into the world, that has real consequences, and the real consequences are well, we're seeing them in real time, right? I don't think it's good. So I don't think all of those reasons go to the fact that Justin Trudeau, in my opinion, shouldn't win this seat at all. And I'm Canadian, right? I think it would be terrible, awful. Worst decision you could possibly make, the UN. Awful, terrible, don't do it. Back to this. To win a seat, a country has to get 2/3 of support, approximately 130 votes, and if 2 countries don't get to that level, then the vote goes to a second or potentially third ballot. Normally, those subsequent ballots would all happen within a few hours of each other, but with the COVID-19 voting restrictions, it could take days for the election to play out. Oh, goody. Canada has had a seat on the council 6 times since the UN's inception, but it has not held a seat since a 2-year term ended in 2000. After months of calls to dozens of world leaders, Trudeau ended the pitch on Tuesday with more calls to the leaders of India, Pakistan, Spain, Ethiopia, Angola, and St. Vincent, and the Grenadines? I think Grenadines. Oh, I'm sorry if I've got that wrong. It's not the Grenadas, though. Anyway, back to this. He was set to have a virtual meeting with the UN ambassadors from around the world late Tuesday night to mark the end of his campaign. Canada has spent about $2 million on the bid and has also promised to increase foreign aid committed to peacekeeping operations. I've heard a much higher number than $2 million, and I'm sure the $2 million doesn't include the staffing that has been used for this push as well. Here's the thing, though. I think that Ezra Levant thinks that maybe Justin Trudeau might win it because of his ties to China. Well, here's what Ezra says. He says, I hate to say it, but I think Trudeau's going to win the UN seat. 57 Muslim countries already know he's a friend to Omar Khadr. They see his financial support for Hamas. And China and its colonies own him and literally own his foreign minister. He's the Manchurian candidate. I think that there's some potential. I think that there's some gold in there, or a diamond in that coal. I don't know the foreign minister, because I was talking about this on Twitter, and there was another pundit. I wasn't able to read the actual article talking about this, but there was another pundit who said that the conflict of interest czar person looked at the Chinese mortgages and said that there was no conflict of interest there. So I don't know necessarily that it is as big a deal as it was made out to be when it first broke. I do think it's a big deal. I think that maybe you could encourage the foreign minister to get a different loan from somewhere, but I don't know if it requires him to step down. But does all of this play into a larger plan, right? What exactly is the UN? What's it proposing here? It's so concerning, right? And Ezra makes some good points, right? Justin Trudeau has certainly signaled to Muslim countries across. I mean, how many trips to Iran has he made? And his brother lives in Iran part time, makes movies in Iran. There's a lot of connections. There's a lot of interesting things to note there. Moving on. Here's Ontario extending the COVID-19 emergency orders until June 30th. Where's the emergency? Our hospitals aren't overwhelmed. Our ICUs aren't overwhelmed. We have a lot of capacity. Our economy is imploding. We have 8 more weeks of curb. Shouldn't we use this time to be, we'll get to that in a minute. Shouldn't we use this time to be reopening the economy and weaning people off? Because, now is the time to open things up. No? I just don't understand. I think we have less than 9 cases active in Guelph. More people have died in Guelph from COVID, or from opiate overdoses than COVID-19. How can you make the case that there's still an emergency that needs to continue? Once this emergency is over, are you going to declare an opiate emergency to keep people in their houses? We can't possibly. Just go to safe injection sites. That's the only place that's allowed. I just don't get it, right? Where's the emergency? Here's Justin Trudeau extending the closure between the U.S. and Canada borders. I don't understand how this is acceptable. We're landing international flights to Canada, but if I wanted to book a trip to Barbados or a trip to somewhere else on a plane, it would be very difficult. I mean, I remember going on a show probably mid-April looking to just book a flight down to Mexico or something to that effect. Something that, Canadian tourists do regularly, and you can't do that. Maybe I'll check that out tomorrow, but I don't think that that's possible yet. And you can't drive across the border. So we're locked in our homes, fines if you go out unless you're going to protest, and you can't drive to the States. No way. Borders closed unless it's essential. And a lot of people pointed out in the comments yesterday, no dancing and no singing is Sharia law. I was just making a Footloose joke. I said, this can't be real. I know about Sharia law, but I didn't make any connection there yesterday. And I didn't want to make it that insidious because it doesn't, I don't know that it seems that direction, but the longer this stuff goes on, the longer these emergency orders are extended, the longer these border closures are extended, without seeing the death that you would expect from this really deadly thing. Why do food workers keep getting big outbreaks, but the nurses and health workers aren't getting big outbreaks? Are we seeing lots of healthcare workers? I don't see the news articles about the healthcare workers. I only see the meat packers or the temporary foreign workers who come and start outbreaks in the residences. So what's going on with the healthcare workers? Is it simply because the healthcare workers are driving by themselves back and forth to home? Because when I asked about this in the Alberta meat packing plants, apparently a lot of temporary foreign workers work in the meat packing and they live in close quarters and they carpool. And people were saying that's not true necessarily of healthcare workers. So, but the longer this stuff goes on, the more you have to question what's the motivation. Do I really think the motivation is Sharia law? No, I don't. But I don't know what the motivation is. I don't know what they could possibly be extending these emergency orders when the country clearly needs to start the economy back up. We clearly can't afford to continue to spend on curb, and we'll see why in just a minute, right? This was May 12th, $252 billion deficit this year. Our entire operating budget for 2019, into 2020 was 371, I think, billion. So we're spending the entire GDP of the country in order to support the country during this 3-month crisis. What happens if the crisis goes into a year? Are we going to just spend trillions? It seems crazy, especially where you can't really put your finger on the emergency. More people died of a drug overdose in Guelph and in Vancouver than COVID-19. So what are we doing? Here's CTV News. This is reported June 17th. NDP support for spending bill assures no election in midst of pandemic. I was talking about this yesterday, the spending that they need and the agreements they need to make. The Liberals don't have a majority government, so any legislation spending falls under that. They need to have a dance partner. They need to have somebody who's agreeing to the legislation. The NDP said they would give the support if the Liberals extended the curb. So we've got the extended curb, another 8 weeks, and we've got extended support for a government not to fall. So there will not be an election triggered today. So maybe a UN seat today, probably no election trigger today, unless something crazy happens, but I don't think that's going to happen. So here we go. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau faces a confidence vote today, but there's little chance his minority government, Liberal government, will fall in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. Trudeau assured the support of the New Democrat MPs by announcing Tuesday that his government is extending the $2,000 a month Canada Emergency Response Benefit for another 8 weeks. In return for extending the curb, a spokeswoman for the NDP, Melanie Richter, said New Democrat MPs will vote in favor this evening of the supplementary spending estimates, some $87 billion in planned primary pandemic-related government spending. Only about $6 billion actually involves new spending. The other $81 billion has already been approved by Parliament. I found this sentence really kind of dismissive, right? Don't worry, it's only $6 billion. The other $81 billion's already been approved by Parliament. You already spent that money. You've already spent the $81 billion. Do you want to do $6 billion for the warranty? It's an extra year. You could just bring it back and we'll just give you a new one. $6 billion. What's $6 billion on $81 billion? Nothing. Just vote yes. Because the Liberals, back to the article, hold only a minority of seats in the House of Commons, they need the support of at least one of the main opposition parties to pass legislation and avoid defeat on confidence votes. Yeah, they need more than the Greens. Any bill involving government spending is typically considered a confidence matter. A government that fails to win a vote of confidence in the Commons is deemed defeated, which would plunge the country into an election. The NDP's support for the supplementary estimate preclude that scenario for today at least. The Prime Minister says that he has heard us and is extending support through CURB through the summer. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh said in a statement, "This is what we were calling for in the short term. We'll keep working to make sure there is help for Canadians who need it in the long term." He could have added working hard. Back to this. Bloc Québécois leader Yves Francois Blanchet also sounded Tuesday like his party would not vote against the spending estimates, although the Bloc had recently joined the Conservatives in demanding a full resumption of the Commons, among other demands, before supporting any government initiative. Quote, "No one wants to send 20 million Canadians to line up to vote while we're still in the midst of a pandemic," he said. Now, this is weird because I said yesterday, and based on tweets that Mr. Blanchet had sent out, I said that it looked like the Bloc weren't afraid of an election, and now they're kind of reversing course on that. So it looks like everybody's just going to vote for it, despite, here's the CBC, with federal deficit likely to be higher than $252 billion, parliamentary budget officer says, and this is posted May 12th. We don't have a current update on this. I'm not going to read this right now, but here's something posted 17 hours ago. This is an opinion piece in the Globe and Mail, and it says the federal government owes Canadians a fiscal update, and this is done by Don Drummond, and Don Drummond is a senior fellow at the C.D. Howe Institute and the Stouffer Dunning Fellow at the School of Policy Studies at Queen's University. And he says Parliament is being asked to authorize massive amounts of spending to mitigate the economic damage of COVID-19. To best represent the interests of Canadian taxpayers who someday will foot the bill, parliamentarians need the best picture possible of the underlying context. That should include a fiscal update. The Prime Minister rejected the idea of a fiscal update last week, arguing that in the situation, any prediction we make will be widely unreliable from one week to the next. Many past updates and budgets vital to the parliamentary process would have failed the reliability test. And they go through some reliability tests, blah, 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 blah. But fundamentally, they're saying you could do this and be wrong, and still it would be a useful tool to help chart the course, right? And they go through all of the times when they were wrong and the benefit in starting the conversation. Because, the piece says, basically you might just get agreement, right? Like you might find a solution through the argument, the debate. Pierre Poilievre posted about 17 hours ago again. New Bank of Canada governor tells Finance Committee, quote, "We are in a deep hole and it will be a long way out of this hole." I've heard increasing the GST to 9% from 6% being floated, and that's not on anything official. That's just people. I don't even, not blue check marks, just people talking about what they could possibly do. But it was part of a think tank's solution. I can't remember which one. Anyway, if I find it, I'll post it. But it's interesting. People see there's a problem with the amount of spending. Like we were at a $20 billion deficit and people were upset about that. And now we're at a 300, like we're at GDP level deficit maybe. The fact that $252 billion in May 12th, and we're now a month past that. And they're like, we don't need to worry about that. Don't worry about the fiscal books. Don't worry about those. It's all good. It's fine. Just we're gonna support Canadians. as Justin Trudeau delivers another speech from his cottage. How long do you think the cottage thing is going to last? I feel like it's gone on much longer than everybody expects. Like, I don't talk about it much because it's just kind of boring. Everybody can see that he's in front of the cottage and he's not leaving. But I don't understand why there isn't more. Why aren't you leaving your... Like, we're in phase 2. Why is the House of Commons still closed? Why aren't you leaving your house? Like, these are basic questions that have been bubbling since March. And it's June. So, where's the press? Where's the media? Oh, right, they're busy calling us all racists. You racists. It's funny, except that it's happening to us, right? Look at that, I'm irrelevant people. Okay, that's enough for me today. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. I got together with Greg yesterday. I'll be recording another one today and another one tomorrow. I'm looking forward to both. And I hope you tune in and check it out. And have a wonderful, wonderful day.